Love, Death, and Robots is back with a third season that I think manages to improve upon the second season while not quite being able to surpass the first. Now, getting into the episodes I enjoyed, Three Robots Exit Strategies is a continuation from the Three Robots episode from Season 1 and follows the same robots as they explore humanity's downfall, this time criticizing humanity's futile attempts at surviving the collapse of their civilization. While I did enjoy the humor of this episode, it didn't quite live up to the first episode in Season 1. I enjoyed the broad range of human behaviors that the robots criticized in the Season 1 episode, rather than being stuck on only one aspect of humanity, such as the case in this episode. Up next is Swarm, which follows two human scientists studying a hive of peaceful aliens and trying to find a way to exploit them for the benefit of humanity. I really enjoyed the premise of this episode, but if there is one complaint I had with it, it's that it felt too short. We basically get the new scientist's first day on the job as he is given a tour around the colony. We then find out why he really wanted to study the hive, and he manages to convince the other scientists to help them, before the two of them go off and have sex. There is then a time skip where we are thrust to the climax of the episode. While I did enjoy the ending, and there was enough set up to justify what happens, I still would have appreciated at least 5 to 10 more minutes showing what happened in the time between the scientist first arriving at the hive and the ending. Despite the abrupt time jump, however, I still enjoyed this episode, and thought that it felt a lot like a StarCraft origin story for the Zerg. Although I don't really know the story of StarCraft, so I could be completely wrong on that. Now the next two episodes are easily tied for my favorite of the season. I'll start with In Vaulted Halls Entombed, which follows a group of soldiers on a hostage rescue mission when they stumble upon an alien temple buried underground. This episode takes a lot of inspiration from Lovecraft's work. If you're familiar with Eldritch Horror, then you'll know what to expect from this episode, as it doesn't deviate too much from the standard formula, and I would definitely recommend watching this episode if you're a fan of Eldritch Horror. And finally we have Bad Traveling, which follows the crew of a fishing boat as they are attacked by a giant intelligent crab with a taste for blood. The crab convinces the crew to transport it to a nearby island. Unable to kill the crab, the crew needs to decide who they will sacrifice in order to satisfy the crab's hunger along the journey. The only other thing I would have wanted to see in this episode was a time before the crab attacked the ship, since the episode opens right when the crab attacks, and so we don't really get a sense of who the characters were before they're forced into this situation where they need to sacrifice their friends for survival. But other than that, this was an amazing episode. But now we get into the episodes that I wasn't too fond of. Although I don't necessarily think these episodes are bad, they just weren't to my taste. The first of those being Night of the Mini Dead, which, as you can probably guess from the title, is about zombies. This episode takes a unique approach to the zombie formula by portraying the world as if it were a miniature diorama being slowly overtaken by the zombie horde. We watch this apocalypse unfold through a stationary camera positioned in the sky, as we watch down upon this miniature world as it begins to crumble. I will say that this episode definitely has the most unique way of starting the zombie apocalypse, with a young couple getting a bit too excited during sex and accidentally starting the zombie apocalypse. This episode managed to be the shortest of the season, and to me it was easily forgettable. And speaking of forgettable episodes, we have Mason's Rats. This episode follows an old Scottish farmer as he wages war with intelligent rats which have managed to forge primitive weapons. The main focus of this episode are the absurd inventions that the pest control company has created in order to deal with the ever-evolving intelligence of the rats. If you enjoy rats being torn apart in ridiculously gruesome and over-the-top ways, then you will no doubt love this episode. But as for me, well, that's not really my thing, and I found the story to be pretty generic overall. Up next is The Very Pulse of the Machine, which follows an astronaut stranded on Jupiter's moon of Io and forced to travel across the planet in order to make it to a spot where she can contact her ship. But in order to survive the journey, she will need the oxygen of her dead companion, and is required to drag the body along with her. She needs to rely on the medicine within her suit, which has the side effect of causing visual hallucinations around her. Overall, I didn't really care about this episode at all. I didn't really find the reveal all that interesting, and the imagery of her hallucinations didn't really manage to hold my attention. And now we get to the one episode that I might actually consider to be bad this season, being Kill Team Kill. This episode is about a group of soldiers who encounter a cybernetic grizzly bear and need to find a way to kill it. Unfortunately, this episode is ridiculously vulgar. It literally opens with one of the soldiers peeing right into the camera, and uses this as a joke that gets dragged on for way too long, despite still being relatively short. The violence is over the top, and the characters are constantly swearing throughout the episode. I'm sure there are some people who will love this episode, but It's just another one that's not for me. Now moving on to the final episode, this one is a very strange case. I wouldn't say it's bad at all, but it's also not something that I'd want to watch. This final episode is called Jabarro, and follows a deaf knight as he hunts down a deadly siren. This episode is easily the most artistic episode of the entire Love, Death and Robots series so far. The technical aspects of this animation are the best I've ever seen. Everything here looks realistic and would be easy to mistake for live action. The way the characters move is incredible to watch while they're possessed by the siren song, and definitely worth studying if you're interested in animation. The camera angles and color grading are also incredible for an animated film. If you're at all interested in animation, you should definitely watch this episode for the technical aspects. The story itself is extremely vague and leaves much up to interpretation, so while the way this animation was made was incredible, I can definitely see a lot of people not enjoying this episode. Overall, I find that my biggest complaint with this season is the same I had with the second season, that being that there's not enough diversity to animation and art styles present here. Only 2 of the episodes use 2D animation, while the other 7 are all 3D. And once again, a lot of these 3D animations try to make it look as real as possible. While I have no issue with 3D animation, I do wish that the style would be changed up a bit so that they don't all start to look homogeneous. Although I wouldn't be surprised if the reason for so many of the episodes being 3D is because Netflix has used their analytics to determine that the 3D episodes are the most popular, and so they think that people will only watch 3D animation. Overall, this was another great season of Love, Death and Robots. My only hope is that Netflix doesn't decide to cancel this series due to their cost-cutting purge of animated content. But these have just been my thoughts on the latest season of Love, Death and Robots. Let me know what episodes were your favorite in the comments, and until next time, thanks for watching.